Are you a woman of faith who's struggling in your current season of life? Do you feel like life is happening to you instead of for you? No matter your season or circumstance, I would love to show you that it's possible to create a more joyful life. Are you ready? Let's go. Happy Tuesday, my friends. Welcome to my podcast, Seasons of Joy. This is episode number 2, and it's titled Pause to Process. This will be the first part of the pause principle that I'm going to be teaching you over the next few weeks. This principle is something I teach my clients and that I also use in my own life to create more joy, no matter the season or circumstance. Everything I talk about is from a life coaching perspective. In no way am I trying to take the place of a licensed therapist or counselor. This information is for those of us who have a healthy brain but feel stuck and want to find a different way to show up in our lives. So let's get started. Today, I'm talking about pausing to process. Now, for a long time, I didn't realize that I was actually the creator of my emotions. I believed that I was at the mercy of them. They just happened to me when someone did something that affected me. This is such a disempowering place to be, believing someone else has control over our emotions. There were relationships in my life that felt hard. I believed certain people in my life should choose and act differently than they were. When they wouldn't do what I believed to be right, I felt hurt because I wanted things to be different than they were. I would cry often, and then I would feel self-pity, then frustration, which then led me to beat myself up for how I was handling everything. I wasn't showing up in these relationships as the person I wanted to be, and I would tell myself I just needed to get over it. But then I would repeat this cycle over and over again. I was not in emotional balance. The reason I was unhappy was because I believed I shouldn't be unhappy. But the truth is, unhappiness gives us the frame of reference for happiness and joy. The negative emotions that we all experience actually make the positive emotions possible. I was experiencing increased negative emotion because I was spending so much time being unhappy about being unhappy, instead of accepting that being unhappy is a natural part of this human experience. Understanding that being a human includes a 50-50 emotional experience was life-changing. Once I understood this and allowed for the negative or uncomfortable emotions, I created more space for the positive emotions. Our bodies were created to experience all the emotions, positive and negative. Our bodies know exactly what to do with these if we will allow them to do it. But if we don't allow ourselves to take ownership of what we're feeling and allow ourselves to process them, we actually block ourselves from moving through them so we can find healing and experience joy. By not processing our emotions, we end up carrying them around in our bodies, physically and our subconscious minds. Eventually, the emotions we have denied ourselves from experiencing manifest themselves and create problems for ourselves. In Dr. Mark Brackett's book, Permission to Feel, he says, quote, "When we deny ourselves the permission to feel, a long list of unwanted outcomes ensue. We lose the ability to even identify what we're feeling. It's like without noticing, we go a little numb inside. It's impossible for us to master our feelings, not to deny them, but to accept them all, even embrace them, and learn to make our emotions work for us, not against us," unquote. He then goes on to say, quote, "If we can learn to identify, express, and harness our feelings, even in the most challenging ones, we can use these emotions to help create positive, satisfying lives," unquote. And I would add, create more joy. When we resist our negative emotions, we actually intensify them. For example, from the story I shared in the beginning, I was actually layering on self-pity, frustration, and shame on top of the hurt that I was feeling. By not accepting that it was okay to feel hurt and let myself feel it, the hurt became more intense, and then I would layer on these negative emotions. This wasn't necessary or useful, and it actually kept me stuck in this same emotional loop. I was creating more negative emotion in my life, which left less room to experience positive emotion. Another way that people don't allow themselves to process their emotions is by reacting to them. I want you to think about a toddler who doesn't get their way. What do? They stomp off, they yell, they slam doors, or they even throw things. They let their emotions control their behavior. Toddlers aren't the only ones that behave this way. As adults, there are times we push against an emotion. We become dramatic or even freak out. We let our toddler brain take over, which prevents us from creating a life we love. Others of us just avoid our emotions by escaping or dulling them, not wanting to feel sad, anxious, stressed, angry, frustrated, worthless, or inadequate. We use buffering behavior like overeating, overdrinking, overworking, shopping, scrolling social media, streaming services, pornography, etc., just to avoid feeling the uncomfortable emotion. We do this all in an attempt to comfort ourselves with false pleasures. These behaviors feel good in the moment, but they ultimately create a negative consequence, preventing us from being who we want to be, keeping us from reaching our desired goals or hindering our ability to create a joyful life. Resisting, reacting, and avoiding our emotions actually gives our power away. In Brene Brown's newest book, Atlas of the Heart, she says, quote, "When we name an emotion or experience, it doesn't give that emotion or experience more power. It gives us more power." I love this. We become more empowered to create more joy by acknowledging and naming our negative emotions and our positive ones. Dr. Brackett also teaches that we can learn how to use our emotions as information. Our emotions are actually sending us messages about what's going on inside of us. If we can learn to process our emotions and get curious about what they are telling us, we can actually achieve a greater well-being, make better decisions, build meaningful relationships, and reach our potential. We can be our best selves and show up in the world as who we want to be. But in order for us to learn from our emotions, we must process them. I want to share with you 5 things about emotions, and then I want to walk you through processing an emotion. So number 1, emotions are vibrations in our body and nothing more. This is different from a physical sensation like, say, hunger. Physical sensations start in the body and then travel to the brain. They are involuntary bodily reactions, but our emotions start in the brain and vibrate through the body. Our thoughts always create our emotions is number 2. Our emotions do not happen to us. We create them with our thinking, the sentences in our brain. Even if we aren't aware of the thought causing them, feelings always follow our thoughts. Number 3, emotions are the fuel for our actions. Everything we do or don't do. We naturally avoid any negative emotion because of how it's going to feel. We also move toward any positive emotion because how it's going to feel. Every decision we make, every goal we reach for or let die, every relationship we nurture or ruin is based on how we are going to feel. Many times we limit ourselves because we're trying to avoid discomfort in our lives. Once we can take responsibility for our feelings, we can actually create emotional fuel and then use it to create a beautiful, joyful life. Number 4, Many people are worried about opening themselves up to a negative emotion because they imagine that the experience will be terrible or horrible. But the truth is, our emotions will not hurt us. If we can become curious and open to experiencing these vibrations, we actually will find that they aren't such a big deal after all. And number 5, we are not our emotions. We are not bad or wrong when we feel any emotion. We are all created in the image of God, and I believe that our heavenly parents experienced emotion. The scriptures teach us that Christ is a God of emotion. He experienced emotions such as sadness, sorrow, grief, anger, compassion, and love. So now that we know a little more about emotions, what does it mean to process our emotions? I would like to show you how. So at this point, I would like you to close your eyes. And I want you to think of an emotion that you're feeling right now. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be positive or negative. I just want you to think of an emotion that you're feeling right now. And I'm going to walk you through my 7-step process for processing an emotion. So step 1, I want you to take a deep breath and accept that you are feeling this emotion and be present with it. Just breathe it in. Next, I want you to acknowledge what you are feeling by naming it. One word. What is that emotion that you are feeling? What is its name? Next, I want you to find this emotion in your body. What does it feel like in your body? Is it a tightness in your neck or chest? Is it a heaviness in your stomach? Is it moving fast or slow? Is it sharp or hot? Is it cold or soft? What color is it? If you could give it a color, what would it be? Has it moved in your body? I want you to just relax into it and observe yourself experiencing this emotion from outside yourself. Just watch yourself. Don't resist it. Don't react to it. Don't avoid it. Just relax into it and observe yourself experiencing it. I want you to be open to this emotion and actually move toward it. And then I want you to remind yourself that you are experiencing this emotion because of sentences in your brain and that nothing has gone wrong. And finally, I want you to just allow this emotion to be until it subsides. I want to share a personal experience, an example of how I use this process. A couple of years ago, my husband and I were heading to a family activity with some extended family. It was around Christmas time. On our way there, I began to feel anxious. We pulled into the parking lot of where we were going, and I told my husband that I was feeling really anxious. And of course, he asked me why, and he wanted to help me fix it. And at the time, I didn't really know why I was feeling it. I just knew I was feeling it. And I remember telling him that I just needed to feel anxious. And I sat in the truck and I closed my eyes and I noticed that I felt a heaviness in my chest. It was not moving. It just was this heavy weight in my chest. It was warm, and I would say it was a color blue. I remember saying to myself, okay, Jill, this is what anxiety feels like for you today. And it's all because of sentences in your brain. Everything's fine. Nothing's gone wrong. This is what anxiety feels like for you today. And I sat there and I breathed in and out without doing anything about it. And then interestingly enough, after about 90 seconds, it began to soften. It didn't totally go away, but it had softened to the point that I was able to actually get out of the truck, go to the family activity, and I just brought anxiety with me. I was able to participate while at the same time bringing my friend anxiety with me. As the day went on, my anxiety dissipated. And since that time, I have experienced this again and again, but I know it won't hurt me. I'm open to experiencing and feeling it, and I know it's going to pass sooner if I just allow myself to process it. Now, I understand that we may not always be able to stop everything we're doing to process an emotion, or sometimes we're struggling with a reoccurring emotion. But I believe this same skill applies. You may want to consider creating what I call an emotional protocol. This means that as you're working on processing a reoccurring or delayed emotion, you allow for a scheduled time to process it. Maybe it's once a day, maybe it's once a week or once a month. Just allowing yourself a time to process your emotion at a later time so that you can still function and experience your life instead of letting your emotion control your life. So allowing yourself time to process, even delayed, gives you this power. This is a skill that is transformative. It's been transformative to me. When we are in an elevated emotional state, we aren't always able to consider why we're feeling the way we feel. We haven't been able to get to curiosity yet. We just are dealing with the emotion. The process I shared allows us this time to pause. As Viktor Frankl taught, there is space between a stimulus and a response. This is where agency lies. By allowing ourselves time to pause, we empower ourselves to consciously use our agency to create more of what we want in our lives. Instead of being stuck in an endless cycle of negative emotions, we bring our lives into emotional balance, all by taking the time to pause, to process. So I invite you to practice this 7-step process as you learn to manage your emotions and to bring your life into more of an emotional balance. So just to remind you, step 1, take a deep breath. Accept that you're feeling this emotion and be present with it. Step 2, acknowledge what you are feeling by naming it. Step 3, find it in your body. What does it feel like? Is it a tightness in your neck or your chest? Is it in your stomach? Is it fast or slow, hot or cold, sharp or soft? What color is it? Has it moved in your body? Just observe it. And step 4, just relax and observe yourself experience this emotion. Don't resist it, react, or avoid it. Step 5, open up to this emotion and move toward it. Lean into it. Allow it. Step 6, remember to remind yourself that you are experiencing this emotion because of sentences in your brain and that nothing has gone wrong. Allow it. Step 7, allow it until it subsides. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for next week's episode, which is the second part to the pause principle, and have a joyful week. If you want to learn more about me, go to seasons-coaching.com. See you next time.